Hi, this is Vinny from the iMoot team. I'd like to welcome you all to Ian Godding's presentation, Wiki and Whatnots. Ian's presented at the iMoot for us now for a few years. It's from Box Hill Institute, Melbourne, Australia. And I hope you all enjoy the session. Thank you very much, Ian, for presenting for us again.
Well, thank you, Vinny. And yes, this is, well, Box Hill Institute is a what we call TAFE, Technical and Further Education. It's mostly competency-based, and actually, as I was researching for this presentation, I've realised that when I described it as an underutilised educational experience, that really applies to TAFE in Melbourne, and I can see that there's heaps and heaps of wikis that are running around the world. In fact, one of the references contains links to about 500 different wikis in primary, secondary, and other education. So I'm wondering if my organisation's lack of wiki usage is because of competency-based education, or whether it's because as learning becomes more focused on qualifications, that then it becomes more individualised and less collaborative. But certainly, I've seen them used in university as well. So, all right, and we've got. I'll publish the results now, and we've got 2 people who have filled it in saying that they haven't used a wiki at all, and 2 people who have used the Moodle one. So we'll find out more about other people as we go. So welcome to Lynn and Liliana and Celine, and let's move on. So what's a wiki? And since some people haven't experienced one at all, oh, actually, I could even, why don't I put my webcam, and then you can actually see me, and there I am. Okay, so this is a wiki about sustainable living and sustainable roofing, at least. You'll see here that it's got an edit button, and that's the critical thing about any wiki. First of all, it's a website in some fashion, and secondly, it's got an edit button so that you can click on the edit button and you can change what's there. So anyone who's authorised can make the changes. So of course, there's the sign up or sign in, so because they won't have it available for anyone to fiddle with and for robots to mess around with and make changes. Okay, so there's the edit button. There's usually some kind of contents that's built into it. The Moodle one doesn't it does automatically if you use the correct fonts and styles, I should say. You'll also see that there's a discussions area, so that as well as people typing in here, they can discuss the page. And so this one doesn't have a history that shows at the moment, but the Moodle one does. We'll see that later on. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples. Here's a 2nd grade one from the United States and from Southern California. And you can see that these 6 and 7-year-old children are using it in a whole lot of different areas. I can increase the size of it, and then we can actually see it a bit better. So you'll see that it's being used in all sorts of their subjects. You can see that they've actually been writing it themselves. They say, we are a group of 2nd graders in Southern California who are using technology to help us share what we're learning with the world. And so they're doing the writing, and Mrs. Ibrahim is not. You can also see that they've put in various things. In this case, it's a tag cloud that shows the words that are being used most frequently. So they're doing a whole lot of writing, they're doing social studies, and they're doing science. And so it's actually a terrific way of showing what they're focusing on. And so it can be used right from second grade. This one's from England, a totally different level, and I'll zoom in a bit on this one too. This one is from is just discussing English and the British language. And I say British because it's also focused on Welsh, and this one is being used by a school group, a secondary school, and focusing on Welsh and Scottish and English culture. So they're using this to summarise what a visitor was saying. So that's quite. So it's an immediate sort of response to an activity they've been involved in, but they've also been storing lots of information about other things that they're studying and working on. Here's a different one, again from England, and this one's describing British Romanticism, and you'll see that there's a table of contents there on the right-hand side. And so they're talking about Clementi's music and Elgar and John Field, and they've also been characterising what it is that's special about classical or romantic music. And there's also discussions on film and music and poetry and art. Here's what the students have actually said about the experience. And I like this second one in particular. I'll just draw it. So I think this project was the most practical project I've ever done in an English class. This project forces all the members of the group to work as a team and to communicate. It also forces those students who are not technologically savvy to use the computer and get used to projects of the future. The Wiki site is a great place to work and find information because it's for students, made by students. So, so these three certainly enjoyed it very much. If I actually, if I share my screen, and I can show you that site in hopefully it doesn't take very long. I'll just show what the teacher's observations were. We can, but it's just taking a moment to come up. It does take a little while. Anyway, look, I'll read to you what it's about. It's what the teacher was saying was, he would allow more in-class hands-on time. I definitely overestimated some of my kids' facility with this technology. I made the assumption that because they knew how to use Word, this would be a snap. But the skills did not transfer as seamlessly as I thought they should. Next time I'll spend at least a class period, 84 minutes, guiding my kids through and having them play in a sandbox. This was using Wiki space. And a bit more time to collaborate in class. He also says he would require edits or comments on other groups' wikis so that they are evaluating each other's wikis. And he would require a minimum number of direct links to external sources. And he would also provide more specific assessment criteria. So it's an interesting thing. You can read that for yourself. It didn't like to do my screen sharing, so look, I'll move on. Okay, so that's three that we've seen, but now a wiki is usually seen as a collaborative thing, but not always. You can have it as an individual wiki, and in Moodle you've got the choice of individual or collaborative. And a journal or a diary, recording exactly what they've been doing in work experience or what they've been finding in their other learning, and can be used. One student that I was helping a teacher with a wiki, and she was using it for a student who was a very turned off by education type student, and he, when she got him into the wiki and was saying, look, you can do this and you can do that, he really got fired up with the kinds of things that were happening during the First World War, the guns and the planes and whatever that was there, and he really got turned on to it and was then involved and showing other students how to use the wiki and all that sort of thing. And so, although the guns is not my preference, it's certainly one of the things that got him involved. So I love wikis because, first of all, they're easy. There's just the edit button, you click on it and you make the changes, you click save, and that's it. There's no uploading or anything like that. You can upload images and things like that if you want to, but okay. And better if the students are doing more work than the teachers. That one's pretty straightforward. But it actually does mean that the students are active, they're engaging, and it's putting the learning in the hands of the learner rather than them being passive recipients. Okay, I also like wikis because they're messy. And the real learning is messy, and then you refine it, and wikis are very good at enabling those changes to happen. And they're visibly building a community. As I've looked at a whole lot of these wikis on in the reference that I'll show you later on, you see communities in the various stages of growing and putting things together. You see various bits that don't work anymore or didn't work, and so it is a growing dynamic thing. And they're risky because people could say the wrong thing, they could insult each other, they could be critical inappropriately. But as Jimmy Wales, who invented the Wikipedia, he said, you don't take knives from restaurant patrons because they might stab each other. And I think it's a matter of handling the risks, monitoring carefully, and letting students know, first of all, what the boundaries are, what they can do and what they can't do, and letting them know that everything is stored and monitored, and also that there's a history that keeps track of exactly what they've done, and you can, if something does go wrong and some major part of it has been removed, you can just go back to the history and see what it was like before that was removed. In fact, I did that with a friend of mine who had a page on Wikipedia, Carol McCulloch, who comes from near Albury, and Barranduda is where she lives in Victoria. And she had done a whole lot on digital storytelling. And when I went to have a look at that page, I found that there was a whole lot of commercial links that had been put in there that were entirely inappropriate and off, nothing to do with digital storytelling. And so I just went in there and reverted it back to the previous stage. And I told her about it about 6 months later, and she thought, oh, thank you. So the history is always there that you can use. And wikis require a different role for the teacher. As you can see in this image, everything's growing and very closely together. Weeds need to be got rid of and things restructured, and that's very much the case with a wiki. The We need various things to be nurtured, moved around under different headings, maybe. Things improved, spelling improved, grammar improved, and students can be very much encouraged to do that. And of course, it then leads to the teacher being more the guide as the students are creating things rather than the source of all information. So it's that sort of thing of the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. Okay, so here's Moodle's wiki. And if you'd like to fiddle while we talk, you can click on that link there, and that will open up a wiki that I've set up for you. So you can click on that. A new tab will open in your browser, and you can click on that, and you could go in there and experiment. So it looks basically like this. Let me just go in and make it look too big. So it looks something like this, exactly like this. And you would click on the edit button. Oh, sorry, don't click on the edit button on this page. Click on one of these other pages. If you've got examples that you've used, then you could click on an examples page. At the moment, you'll see that these pages are in italics and red because they haven't been used yet. So you can click on that. Then you can click on the edit button for that examples page and add some examples if you like, or you can go into the sandpit and just have a play and click save, and then this will look a bit different. This is just an image of the wiki, so this particular one won't change, but the real one will change. So you can see also that there's a place for comments and discussion. There's a place for history where you can go back. If you've got files that you've attached, then it's in there, and so on. When you're editing a page like this, if you use as a style, I think it's the heading 2 style, that actually becomes part of a contents area at the top, is automatically put in there. Now, when you click on edit, you'll see it looks something like this. So in order to create the sandpit 1 page, what I did was I put in double square brackets at the opening, double square brackets at the closing, and that makes a new page. It also, those things can be used anywhere within the wiki. So if I was to put in this into the sandpit 1 page, then I'd have a link from the sandpit 1 page into the examples page 1. So it can also, well, we'll talk about that navigation later on. So there's the example, create a new page just simply by doing double square brackets around frogs. And that gives it to you. Okay. So here we start with some examples of how you might use it. And a common way is that people set up, or the teacher can set up a class project, and students either in groups or individually can be working on the project, and they can see each other's pages growing. Another way you could set up would be to set up a news, current affairs wiki, and students could be following the issues and adding more to their page about a particular issue as things are growing. There is actually a wiki text, but you could actually set up your own textbook, your own wiki textbook, and students could be all doing individual parts of the textbook, individual chapters or individual paragraphs or pages, and together the whole class could be developing a textbook on that particular topic. Where I work, there's fashion students, and one of the teachers set up a wiki for sources of belts, buckles, bows, materials, zippers, and all those other things that go into fashion. So the students, when they found a new shop or a new source, or it might have been on the web or whatever, they could then go into the fashion wiki and add it so that other students could be using those sources as well. Okay, there's another example of reviews of books and films. And in fact, this particular one that I've put in here is going to a blog rather than to a wiki, but it's effectively doing a similar purpose. So what's the difference between a blog and a wiki? A blog has a number of different articles, one after another, and it doesn't retain a structure of the content. So you don't have headings and subheadings. You don't have a page on this topic and a page on that topic. It's one great big long page, usually with the most recent stuff at the top. Another good example is sharing subject resources, so that if a student finds a really good website about something or other, they can put it in their wiki, and then other students in the class can share it. Okay, here's another really interesting one. Now let me encourage you to, if you all can click on this Primary School and Bungaree Historical Society, this one, the primary school, actually I'll just try sharing again and see if I can get it to work this time. And I'll just save that, and there we are. I just didn't click on the right thing, did I? So I'll take you all to the primary school in Bungaree. Bungaree is a little primary school in Victoria, and there's a Bungaree Historical Society. And so the primary school and the Historical Society were sharing information. So the primary school, and if I click there, then you will all now see this website. And so here's the primary school, and they had a visit from Bill Grigg, who had been a pupil at the school, and so they were sharing this sort of information. They were then documenting and drawing what they saw as his experience. That's just rather lovely. Now this was connecting between the primary school and the Historical Society, and you can see here that if I click on the history project presentations, then there are various other documents that have come from the Historical Society that the primary school can work. So it's a great way of connecting between those two. Going back here to this one is another remarkable one, and again a primary school, but sharing between Victoria and America. So Wedderburn is up near Bendigo in Victoria here in Australia, and this one is in Kansas, in Ashland and Dale or somewhere, I've forgotten quite where it is, in Kansas. And if we click on this, you'll see that it was focused on being green. There's a project on being green, but as they were working, they came across the question about milo, and milo in Kansas, in the farming community, is a type of corn grown as cattle food. But milo here in Australia is more based on, well, it's a chocolate drink. You can see here that the students on the Thursday, the students at Wedderburn were describing what they had done. Then on the Monday, the students at Andale were watching the same one, and so they're documenting what they were doing. And then back here, it's Wedderburn's turn. It's a really nice way of the two schools working together across the world. I thought that was rather terrific. I shall just stop the sharing now. And okay, you can also use it, a lot of schools are using it as a classroom space where news and events, and one primary school's classroom even had a weekly planner in there. This is what we're doing today, this is what's coming next week, and so on. And there's also one with school competitions. All right, moving on. As well as students using it, teachers can use it. to share information. So if you've got a whole lot of different projects, you can use a wiki to store those projects and the data for them and the links that you're using. Here's another good one here, history resources that the history teachers from across the school, or I think across one school, we're all sharing the good links that they found, good sources of information. But there's no reason why you shouldn't use it as a staff meeting agenda either. And everyone can say, oh, we want to talk about Fred, or we want to talk about the issue of not enough resources, or whatever we want. So enough from me. So just for a few minutes, let's get your examples and ideas that you've, now you can either put it into the chat area down the bottom there, or you can take the microphone and so if I unmute microphones, then you can take the microphone and tell us something, and other people could type in a good idea into the chat area, or you can click on this T, and then you can type in your idea on the screen. So whether it's an idea that you'd like to use, an idea that you have used a wiki for, or something, let's see what you'd like to do, or something that you've seen. Let's give it a few minutes there for people to type in. Only presenter can type on the screen. Thanks, Gareth. So you'll have to type in the chat area. Or unmute your microphone and have a go. We'll give it just a minute or two. A wickedly Moodle web quest. A web quest for teachers. So the teachers were learning what? Lynn? I'm not a fan of the Moodle wiki layout. Yes, it's not as interesting visually at all as Wikispaces or some of the others. Your IT people used it to do Grail's development discussions. Not sure what you mean. It can be hard to learn, which puts people off. Yes, the double square brackets idea. Oh, it's a programming thing. Oh, right, thanks. So, Lynn, what were the teachers learning with the web quest? Oh, fair enough. Thank you. The web quest was to help teachers design courses in Moodle. Fair enough. Terrific. A wiki to teach people how to use a wiki. Fair enough. Okay. Now, Dana was talking earlier about teaching Spanish in a secondary school using Moodle, and she was also saying that she sometimes uses Poodle. So you could actually use Poodle in a Moodle wiki to have sounds and images and writing on a whiteboard that can be put on into the wiki. So there's lots of options. Okay, moving on. So there's a wiki that's rather grown out of, or there's a garden that's grown rather out of control, and that's exactly how a wiki can become too if you're not careful about it, if you don't structure it and get the students to keep restructuring it. We use one around Box Hill Institute within e-learning and the IT areas, and they share information about particular systems using it, and every now and again it has to be restructured so that it makes sense to everybody, and people need to follow the structures that are there and build appropriate new structures within the wiki. All right, so you can set ground rules. It's important to set ground rules for students, and I've put an example in there that you can follow later on. You can encourage the use of the discussion pages so that people can be discussing what should this page be looking like, what sort of things should we be adding into it, and discussing how it should be structured. You can use the history, like we said, to track what a particular student has said, and you can revert it back to how it was before. You can set it up. Sometimes when I am using a wiki, I'll create a page for each student. And so on the home page, I'll just put in a page for each student, and then they can go into their page and start contributing. Other times it might be a matter of each group has a page, and they can be developing their group, and whether they're at home or at school or at TAFE, they can be contributing to that. Or maybe you have it per topic, and maybe you set up a template either with headings or questions so that it can structure a bit. There's also some suggestions for teachers that you can click on there and see that other page that I have there. All right, so Moodle's wiki, we talked about the first one, and also mentioned that you can actually, if you call the homepage, wiki homepage, or whatever you want to call it, you can use something like that in any other page and bring it back to the home page, and it makes the navigation a bit easier. Here are some traps though. You can't change the home page name. Once you've set it, that's it. So think about it carefully. There's also 3 different options for making wiki pages. One's NWiki, one's Creole, and the other's HTML. And if you go into the format options and you click on force format, then students won't be asked what type of format do they want to use, which is too complicated a question. I don't know why we don't have it as a default that the HTML just shows, but apparently some people are used to using the Creole or the NWiki formats. But if you just go in there when you're setting it up and click on force format when HTML is showing, then students won't get asked the technical question. Next little problem, you can't have any 2 pages with the same name. So you can't, within one wiki, you can't have Fred saying, having a page called What I Did on Wednesday, and Frida having a page called What I Did on Wednesday, because you can't have any 2 pages with the same name. You can also, one other limitation is that you can only have one person editing a page at a time. So within the Moodle wiki, that's a bit of a limitation. So that's another reason why when I set it up for a group of students or a whole class of students, when I'm doing professional development or something like that, I'll either make a page for each teacher to contribute in, or for each group or each topic. So there's a whole lot of different pages that people can be working on. Okay, other platforms for collaboration. Some people, Melanie says, I don't really get the other formats. Now, we don't need to get the other formats. We just have to click on Force Format, and then the page will show with the normal editor. Wiki, I think, has some special codes that makes bold and special codes that do underline or make or whatever, but it's so much easier to just leave it as HTML and Force Format, and then it's not really a question at all. Melanie? Is it easier to set up than the links in the lesson activity? Oh, yes, much easier. It's you're all using the HTML, and often in a wiki you're not connecting from one page to another, apart from making one new page, and then mostly people are putting in the content. But you certainly can. Yes, depends how familiar you are with the lesson. One interesting other thing that you could use a wiki for, considering links going from pages to pages, is you could actually use it for scenarios, and people could have particular choices, and so you could have a scenario where someone's driving along the road and sees a car that's crashed, and they stop to render first aid, and what are their first choice? What's the first choice that they do? And it could be a page that goes to dragging the person out of the burning car, or it could be a page that goes to check for oncoming traffic, or it could be a page that calls an ambulance. So you've got all sorts of options there. So the difference between a forum and a wiki, a forum is very much in terms of threads of discussion, and it doesn't have subjects, and it doesn't have a page for cooking, and another page for baking, and another page for frying. So there's no structure in terms of contents, table of contents. The forum is structured very much, he said this, and then she said that, and he said this, and she said that, kind of thing. And the difference between a wiki and Google Docs is that Google Doc basically is all one document, but the real benefit of a Google Doc is that a whole lot of people can type on the same document at the same time. So that one's an interesting option. There are also Google sites like this. And there's also Wikispaces, WetPaint, and PBWorks, and many of them have got many more interesting options of formatting and dolling things up, and you'll see them as you look at some of the other wikis in the reference, which is coming up shortly. This one here, the example of educational wikis, there's about 500 different wikis that are linked to in there with a description of what it's about, and a link to it, and the teacher who was involved in it. This is a useful a list of interesting ideas to use, ways to use wikis for a more collaborative and interactive classroom. You could click on that one and then download the PDF, and it's nicely organised. And there's a nice slide share that Fiona Beale has set up. So that's it. Any questions? Yes, I like the idea of branching scenarios. You can put people into particular situations and see what they'll do. One of the, I've just forgotten her name, the wonderful educator who creates commercial training sites, and she very much encourages the scenarios where people can fail at it, and if there's an element of risk again, that if you do the wrong thing, then someone might die, and it's all in a page on the web. So you do it with a lesson. So yep, yes, Tiddlywiki was very good, wasn't it? Yes, so in a scenario, you can put people into interesting situations, and if they do the wrong thing, then some disaster can happen. And the benefit of a lesson for a scenario is that you can actually be tracking people. You can see exactly which path they've taken. With the wiki, you can't do that. People just click on one page and go from one place to another. So there's no real tracking apart from in the records and logs. Okay, any other thoughts?
Hi, it's Gav from the iMoot team. Hi, Ian. Just while waiting for perhaps a few more questions to come in, can I thank you for your time presenting a really sort of informative on the wiki and how it's sort of different, and all the, especially the hardest thing with a lot of complicated things like wikis is the idea. So great sort of ideas there. So once again, thank you for your time and the effort, and for putting into this lovely presentation.
Thank you.